Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all the places at Hawk Blogger. And hopefully you can hear me okay, see me okay. As you can tell, I'm not in my normal abode. I am in Phoenix. I am waiting for the game tomorrow. I just arrived here a little bit ago and just finished the Mike Macdonald press conference. Thankfully, the team agreed to switch it to Zoom, so all of us in the media that were not in Seattle could actually participate and ask some questions. And got a good show. So I'll tell you about the mixed bag on the injury front. We'll talk about the implications of that. We don't yet have all the Cardinals injury information, although we have some indicators that we'll find out a little bit sooner than later what that means. And I will be joined by Bo Brack of Phoenix Sports, who covers the Cardinals, was with us for the preseason preview of Arizona. Bo's great, and he is en route, so we will have him join here in just a little bit. Let's get right to it and talk about where the Seahawks injury situation is. So we just literally got off Zoom with Mike Macdonald, and good news first. Devin Witherspoon and Julian Love will be back on the field for this game. They have no injury designation, meaning they're not questionable, they're not probable, they're not doubtful. They're full go. So they are back for this game. That is a big deal. Both of those guys are massively impactful players for the secondary. Less than great news. There are three guys that are questionable in that Anthony Bradford, Boye Mafe, and let me make sure I've got the right person on the other one. Anthony Bradford, Zach Charbonnet, and Boye Mafe are questionable. And Anthony Bradford's a new player on the list, meaning he wasn't on the injury report the last couple days. Now, those were estimated reports, but still, that means that whatever happened probably in practice today. He is questionable with a back injury. Now, he has had a back injury before the first game of the season, ended up playing. The fact that he's questionable, you hope he's going to be able to play, but there are some implications if he cannot, how the team would handle that kind of situation. We'll talk about that in a second. Other things on the injury report, Nick Emanwori is doubtful. And I have some ideas about why he's doubtful, and I'm not convinced it's because of the injury necessarily, but I'll explain what I mean by that. Josh Jones, the backup swing tackle, is out. That also has some implications we should just get into. And then the last thing is, if you haven't already heard, Robbie Oots has been put on injured reserve. So, I think there was some question about whether he would be back before the IR period was going to go up. And I think they probably felt like they needed the roster spot for other reasons. So Robbie Oots will miss the next 4 games, including this one, which means Brady Russell, should they choose to use a fullback, which they've done quite a bit so far, would be the fullback that they bring into the game. I have some thoughts about that. I'm not convinced that they are going to lean on fullback as much with Robbie Oots out. I believe they'll probably go more to 12 personnel, meaning an extra tight end as opposed to an extra back. I think that is a better personnel package for them, but we will find out. So I teased a little bit about some of the implications of these things. Let's get to the Anthony Bradford thing first, because he is a starter on the offensive line, right? Well, if Anthony Bradford goes out and cannot play, the way that Mike Macdonald has explained it so far is that Jalen Sundell would actually slide over to right guard and Olu Oluwatimi would be your starting center. That still could absolutely be the plan. That could absolutely be your best 5 linemen to get out there. It's also possible that they've changed their mind since then and that there's another configuration that they'd want to go with. So we'll find out there. I think that's a big question mark. And then as far as Boye Mafe goes, that's something that came up in the game. He's been on the injury report all week. He's questionable. We'll find out how that goes. But if he can't go, you're going to see a lot more Derek Hall, a lot more DeMarcus Lawrence, and a lot more Uchenna Nwosu. Keep in mind that the Seahawks basically had 3 edge players for the first game of the season and, managed fine in that regard. So Uchenna Nwosu, I thought, looked much more ready to contribute last week against the Saints, was moving better. I thought was more physical, made some plays. So, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you obviously would much rather have Boye Mafe than not. The thing with Zach Charbonnet, him being questionable after being full participation, at least from an estimated injury report the first 2 days, is a little surprising. I would have thought he was not going to be on the injury report and just would play. The fact that they have him as questionable, don't know what that means in terms of the likelihood he'll go out there, but George Holani would be the next one in line. And then after that, with Jacardier Wright going on IR, you'd have to bring up Khalil Herbert, who you just signed to the practice squad and has barely had any reps with the team. So I don't even know if they've had a real practice other than whatever you'd call what they did today since he's been here. So I think you really hope Zach Charbonnet can go, because they don't have much depth beyond Holani that I think they'd feel comfortable putting in a football game. Now, Herbert is a vet, but still, they would have to probably really dumb down or reduce their offensive playbook with a guy that has literally just never played with any of these guys before or in this offense. The good news on the questionable side, if there is good news, is that so far this year, the Seahawks have only designated 1 player as questionable on a Friday or day before, the end of the week injury report, which is what this is the equivalent of. And that was JSN this weekend when he had an illness. He obviously played well. Last year in Mike Macdonald's first season, when they had a player with a questionable designation, 64% of the time, almost 2/3 of the time, the player played in the game. So questionable has generally meant they're more likely to play than not, but that's the numbers. Those are the numbers. So we will find out exactly what the case is with those questionable guys. Now, Nicky Manwari. What I was getting at before is that I'm not sure this is they're worried about his foot, or that he isn't or his ankle, I should say, that he isn't back to ready. They didn't really have more practices this week. And one of the things that Mike Macdonald has been very clear about for multiple weeks now is that Devin Witherspoon and Julian Love are in a different category than Nicky Manwari. And because Nicky Manwari is a rookie, he feels like he's going to need more practice reps for Mike Macdonald to be comfortable putting him out there. They basically didn't practice this week. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just looked at that and said, you know what, let's not rush him back out there. It'd be great to have him, but D'Anthony Bell's been playing good football. They just added him back to the 53-man roster. They signed him to the 53-man roster today. So maybe they'll just roll with D'Anthony Bell. They have what is essentially a mini bye week after this, and then you can be probably more confident that Nicky Manwari will be with you the rest of the way, starting with the Tampa game a week from Sunday. And you feel a little more confident that he's going to get all the reps in practice he needs to really have a good performance. And it would be a home game. All those things probably factor into why Nicky Manwari is listed as doubtful. So I'm not taking that to mean that the injury is still lingering. If you saw him on the sideline during Torrey Horton's punt return and how fast he was running and how high he was jumping, I think he's doing all right. I think it's probably much more just about making sure he is really prepared to play in the game. So that's that. Now, the other one that is worth kind of getting into, and honestly, I have not prepped on this, so I want to look and think about this. So if you get to, if you have any problems with if you have any problems with tackle, Charles Cross or Abe Lucas, Josh Jones has been your swing tackle backup. Now, with Josh Jones out for this game, I'm a little curious. Like, is that Mason Richmond? Is that Bryce Cabledew? Who is it? And do they bring up Amari Kite, who is on the practice squad? I don't know. I mean, it's honestly a question I don't have a good answer to, because Josh Jones has been their swing tackle. We definitely saw Mason Richmond and Bryce Cabledew get some tackle reps. Mason Richmond, both of them played pretty much exclusively tackle in college. There are also reasons that both of them were expected to move inside in the NFL, and I don't think most folks would be comfortable with those guys. The coaches would be comfortable with those guys being the ones to come in. So I think the Seahawks have to be fingers crossed that Charles Cross and Abe Lucas don't get banged up. And we'll kind of see, who would be the backup tackle if they need to do that. Now, as far as I can tell, we still do not have a Cardinals injury report, but let's bring in our Cardinals insider, Bo Brack, who may have more information than I do. Bo, first of all, how's it going, man? Good to see you.
It's good, man. We're in a weird place here with the Thursday Night Football prime time. The Cardinals practicing in the afternoon for the first time in forever. I don't expect that injury report to come until maybe 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Got it. So it sounds like at least the initial perspective was that, like, Will Johnson, the cornerback, the rookie corner, was not at practice, at least the part open to the media, but some of the offensive linemen that have been on the injury report were. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So Will Johnson, for a second straight week, according to the estimations, did not practice. And then today, the one practice that they had leading up to the game, no Will Johnson as he's making his way through that groin injury. Paris Johnson Jr. on the other side, though, their starting left tackle, even though he practiced limited all last week, looked good out there. Probably going to be limited again on the practice report, and then might have a questionable injury designation. But I think things are trending in the right direction for Paris.
Yeah, I was curious about that. It was a little surprising to me that he didn't play last week. What makes you feel more confident that he'll be available this week?
Yeah, I don't know if it was just they felt like the defensive front might have been something they wanted Paris Johnson Jr. to be available for, and they were willing to roll with Kelvin Beachum at left tackle last week. And, like, if you look at the grades, he wasn't great, but he was fine. He filled in admirably, and there wasn't a big, missed assignment or missed block that got Kyler Murray, a running back, blown up. So I think they were just trying to get Paris Johnson Jr. an extra breather, but then also be ready for a second straight divisional game against a defensive front that gave him fits twice last year.
And the rest of the offensive line group, it seemed like there were some folks that had been questionable there as well. Beachum behind Paris Johnson Jr. and then some of the guards as well. So what's the kind of thought there?
Yeah, so Beachum was somebody that gets a couple veteran days off, but showed up with a knee. He seems like he's fine, like he's good to go. Saw him in the locker room, kind of blew off like any chance that he could miss a game. He's their primary swing tackle. He really kind of can play that left or right side. And then, interior wise, you see Evan Brown out there. He was on the practice field again. So I think that they should, if Paris is good to go, they'll be at full strength on that offensive line. You got Will Hernandez, who's working his way back from a knee injury, had surgery last October. He's been active or on the active roster, but he hasn't been active on game days as he just continues to work back from that. It's been less than a calendar year since he injured that knee, but he's a guy that, once healthy, will provide depth or could slide back into a starting spot. It hasn't been an area of strength that they anticipated with second-year right guard Isaiah Adams and Evan Brown, who was, pretty steady last year at left guard.
All right, Bo, let's talk about this game, man. It started out as Cardinals favorites. That swung now. The Seahawks are generally favored to win this game. How do you see this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you turn on the tape, you look at the stats, you're going to say this should be a Seahawks win. These are two teams trending in different directions. Cardinals, though, do get the advantage that they're playing at home on a short week. And like they're relatively full strength. They are down Will Johnson. They are down Garrett Williams. But for the most part, up front in the trenches, they're in a good spot. They have their playmakers there. I know they just lost James Conner, and that might have been a decisive factor in why you saw an incremental slide as far as going from a slight favorite to a slight underdog. But the fan base would tell you, Brian, that the Cardinals have no shot. I disagree. I think that Jonathan Gannon and his coaching staff have done well as far as responding from bad performances. And I think that they want to be able to put a good performance on in front of their home fans in a primetime game that this fan base hasn't seen for a long time. I think that they match up fairly well, but they're going to have to take care of the football on offense, and they're going to have to some way conjure up some explosives in this passing game.
Yeah, I mean, the James Conner injury seems massive. And as someone who's, watched a lot of Cardinals film and over the years, all the conversation tends to be about Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. and a bunch of other things. To me, that team has always, at least the last few years, has revolved around James Conner. He seems like the emotional leader, the most reliable offensive player. And especially when they get in the red zone, that guy was pretty automatic to be their battering ram to get 6 points instead of 3. What's your take on, his absence and Trey Benson, who has some nice numbers, but also like kind of 2 big explosive runs and then a lot of not so explosive runs. So what's your take?
They can really kind of supplement they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting as far as his total yardage on the year. But look, they exist. 29 yards in the first game, 52 yards. You've seen it. Can he get that dirty yardage? Can he be the guy like the junkyard dog that James Conner was between the tackles? Can he be that guy after contact? Can he get north and south quicker than he has so far in his abbreviated career out of Florida State? Used to be a home run hitter for the Seminoles, Brian, but we haven't seen that much so far for him. It's going to be interesting to see, like 66 overall pick, 3rd round, or you viewed him as getting this opportunity as RB1. Is this too soon? I think this is a guy that could carry the load, but a couple things he has to kind of mature on, and it's really kind of getting going and finding that pivot point to push off and get those yardages that are necessary to turn second and 8 into 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 4 instead of putting you in 3rd and long.
Why has that? I mean, before Connor got injured, the Cardinals running game was really struggling. And this is a team that prides itself on physical. It got a really good, strong offensive line. Is it the offensive line that's been having trouble creating holes? Has it been player? Like what's your evaluation about why the offense hasn't been able to run the ball?
Yeah, I think on tape you would see that it's the offensive line. The offensive line, which it prided itself on kind of being a bully in the run game, and it is an extension with Tip Ryman, who they took a year ago out of Illinois as the top blocking tight end in that draft, and kind of being a part of their identity. And through 3 games, it hasn't been there, and it's been a product of, I think, the struggles of Adams, the struggles of Evan Brown. Tip Ryman missed the 2nd week, but even, that being sandwiched between him being available 1st and 3rd week, it just hasn't been there outside of a couple explosives. And most of the other yardage was from Kyler Murray's scrambles. So it's been pretty non-existent as far as their ability to find consistent run game. Talking to their center, Yelda Froholt, the other day, he just thinks it's just you can't try to recreate things here, reinvent the wheel. It's just a matter of plugging away, and it could be something that just comes to him naturally, but there needs to be a bit of an urgency. And as you mentioned, you can't discount the absence of James Conner going forward. Even though his leadership continues with him not being on the playing field, he's already supporting Trey Benson, saying he's excited to watch him run, but they're going to have to prove it. They're going to have to do it with getting some yards on Thursday night against a very stout defensive front that I feel, Brian, was like things changed. Like the Seahawks were a bad run defense, and then last year they played the Cardinals and something clicked for them under Mike McDonald.
You guys caught them after all the personnel changes. That's right. The timing switch and why they became a good run defense over the last part of that year. So, Bo, as we kind of keep going with the offense, and we'll switch sides in a second, Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. are the guys that get the most attention. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is coming off a really rough second game with a couple drops. And, I think he had a touchdown in the first game against the Saints. And let's start there.
Okay.
I expect this guy to bounce back and still be a dangerous player. It seems like the Cardinals fans are quite down on him. Where are you?
Yeah, look, it's tough not to be disappointed when you use an asset like 4th overall, the top non-quarterback in that draft, and he seemed like he was a can't-miss prospect. He was not only pro-ready, but he was Pro Bowl caliber ready coming out of Ohio State. And it turns out, I think the mix of just the offensive ecosystem, the play calling, and then also a little bit of a reserves young guy, and Marvin Harrison Jr., not your stereotypical diva. It's just been a long maturation process. But then you've got two forces going against each other where it's like, it's not the Giants where they're going to spam Malik Neighbors the football, where he's going to see an extremely high target share. It's quality over quantity. But if you're not getting him involved, is he going to be ready to, make the play when his number's called? And in Santa Clara last week, he didn't. Like, he had 2 opportunities to kind of jumpstart this thing and just couldn't get it done. And he's seeing more of a target share, like 5 to 6 per game instead of double digits. And that was the question going into year 2. Like, were they going to up that? Was he going to be a bigger piece of this? And I think it's just like, he's got to make plays in order to get more targets. But week 1, it was like 5 catches on 6 targets, 71 yards and a touchdown and a DPI. Like, can he do that? If he can, I think that could be enough, even though you're still going to be wanting more.
Yeah. The 49ers, I think both the Cardinals and the Seahawks can agree, benefited from some really good players making some really bad plays to gift them victories. Reek Woolen had 2 just terrible plays at the end of that game, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. had 2 terrible plays in their game. And if those guys just play their normal selves, I think the 49ers are sitting there 1-2 instead of 3-0. So Kyler Murray, Drew Petzing, your the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals. It sounds like the pitchforks and torches are out for the Cardinals OC. This was an offense last year that was like top 12 in most advanced metrics. What's going on with the passing game, and why is it so conservative? Has it always been this way, or is it just something happening so far this year?
I mean, for the most part, under Petzing, he got a little bit of grace because his first year he's got Josh Dobbs as his quarterback as Kyler Murray's coming back from the knee injury, and then he gets him back in week 10, and you see this efficient offense, right? And you're like, okay, this is a good jumping off point. And then we saw kind of a continuation of that. It felt like it was more the status quo. And to what the stats you pointed out, like they're pretty much middle of the road, above average. I think the run game does a lot of the heavy lifting there. And then also Kyler finding the open receiver. But as far as getting chunk yardage, as far as explosives in the passing game and utilizing these wide receivers that they've spent, pretty high assets on, valuable assets on, they don't do it. Like, there's just no semblance of a downfield passing attack. And I think, the fan base is just, they're out for blood as far as this goes, just because they've got Marvin Harrison Jr. that they envision of being this big playmaker, being the next Larry Fitzgerald, the next DeAndre Hopkins. And he's not getting the chances. Like, you're going through halves of football and he's barely sniffing a target. So, and it's not just a Marv thing. Like, that's where you kind of look at this game. It's like, it's not just Marvin Harrison Jr. that's underperforming. It's Michael Wilson, who had a good rookie season, but you've seen the numbers kind of steadily decline. Zay Jones, who we've seen have an 800-yard receiving season in this league, just being an afterthought in the passing game. Greg Dortch, who's a nice little gadget player, just not even be involved in it. So they're not finding ways to get the ball to the wide receivers. It's too risk adverse to where there's a lot of check downs and there's a lot of balls that are being funneled to running backs and tight ends. And people are just kind of tired of that because they want to see the governor take it off of this thing.
So it's interesting because, the assumption sounds like it is the OC that is conservative, not the quarterback that's making conservative choices. And Kyler Murray, like, a number for me that jumped out when I was preparing for this game is that he has not yet completed a pass when scrambling outside the pocket this year, which is like part of Kyler Murray's, superpower, right? And some of that might just be drops, but, I'm curious, last thing, I guess, on the offense, Zay Jones, you mentioned, he's out. We do know that. Who do you think takes those snaps, and what's the impact of him being out for what they're going to try to do?
It's a combo of guys. I think Simi Fioco, who played for the Chargers last year, he's more of a special teams guy. I think an undrafted rookie free agent from last year, Xavier Weaver, who's kind of got the only guy in that room, I think, that has the speed to take the top off of the defense. Maybe they give him a couple plays. Maybe he has a couple, one part of the playbook where he can come in and try to get that. But I think that's probably where the work share goes. But Petzing would probably be content just going more 12, 13 personnel looks than having to, get outside of just Marvin, Michael Wilson being on the field. Integration, a little bit of a pepper in Greg Dortch. So Zay Jones isn't going to be missed tremendously. Like he did have an opportunity to make a game-sealing catch in San Francisco and couldn't come up with it. That was the play he got injured on. But yeah, it's not going to be a big loss regardless. And maybe they'll try to get somebody that they've stashed on their roster now a year and change to see what he's made of.
All right, Bo. So one of the listeners we have who's from the Phoenix area, at least as a Cardinals fan, says your last name is pronounced Brock. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we know that now. I should, if I'm good at this, I should have asked you beforehand, but I just assumed it was pronounced the way it's spelled. But now I will call you Bo Brack from Phoenix Sports. Let's switch sides. Let's talk about the defensive side, which it's kind of this bizarro upside down world where the Cardinals came in with questions like, oh, the defense last year was the problem. The offense was pretty good.
Yeah.
Defense looked pretty damn good, Bo.
Yeah. I mean, talk about polar opposites, Drew Petzing and Nick Rallis. Like Nick Rallis, the DC, 32 years old. A lot of people believe he's a future head coach in the making, kind of the protege of Jonathan Gannon, who has the defensive background. Nick Rallis, I think there was a lot of confidence, Brian, that like once you kind of gave him upgraded roster, you were going to see results like you're seeing early on. Like you talk about last year, I think they did have like this bend, don't break, probably the more consistent side of the football week in and week out. And since like week 7 last year, they're one of the, lowest touchdowns against defense in the entire league. And I think that's because Nick Rallis knows how to, make the calls out there, knows how to utilize his personnel. And with what they did, and they threw this kitchen sink at the defensive line, and you're not going to see 16th overall pick Walter Nolan, but he's going to be a future piece of that. You've got Calais Campbell at 39 years old, who is beating father time at the moment. Dalvin Tomlinson still playing at a high level. Darius Robinson, I think we're still waiting for the former first rounder to pop. Dante Stills is doing well. And then you're seeing an improvement off the edge, and Josh Sweat and Baron Browning. So with the increased pressure that they're able to get up front, especially rushing for, I think you're just seeing better results, more mistakes from opposing offenses, and the Cardinals win the turnover battle consistently so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, looking at some of the Cardinals numbers, they're 23rd in the NFL in yards allowed per game, but they're 12th in yards per play. And most importantly, at least in terms of holding teams down, they're 3rd in third down defense. They're 4th in red zone defense. So they are really a tough team when you get into those third down situations to convert on. And one of the things I'm interested in your perspective on this, Bo. When I've watched Cardinals games, I feel the pass rush, but they have like 5 sacks. They're, by almost every metric, not a good pass rush team other than ESPN's pass rush win rate for, I think they're like 8th. So Baron Browning and Josh Sweat seem productive. Why aren't they getting home more often?
Browning is one of those guys where almost over pursues. He's got a really good quick first step and is able to get after an FC. He blew by Bryce Young a couple times in some key moments where you're just kind of pulling your hair out. But one of those guys that does, he's big in that pass rush win rate statistic that I know Cardinals fans are obsessed with. And Sweaty J, I've really been pleased by Josh Sweat's performance. He has been able to kind of parlay that Super Bowl performance into a hot start here and has made some really kind of big plays to start games. As far as it consistently going away, there has been, the Cardinals have been playing with the lead, at least in the first 2 games, 70% of the time. They were a bit in prevent a lot of those second halves. So you saw them kind of give up quite a few passes in front of them and then not, try to give up the game winning, big time explosive down the field. So I think that's a product of it a little bit. But early in games, they've been, I feel like, pretty effective when they need to be from a pressure standpoint. But, the first 2 games have kind of fluked up their numbers a bit.
So we got to touch on the cornerback situation. Sean Murphy-Bunting, Starling Thomas lost before the season even started. Those are the only guys that really have a lot of experience other than Garrett Williams, who is one of the top 2 or 3 nickel corners in the NFL. He's lost to IR. Then Will Johnson looks like a great get in the second round. He seems like he didn't play last week. Seems like he's not going to play this week. So who are the corners? Denzel Burke, Catrell Clark, who are the corners for the Arizona Cardinals?
Well, they did utilize in 2024, their second round pick was Max Melton, and Max Melton's not going to blow you away as far as the stat sheet, but he's somebody that I think the coaching staff has a lot of confidence in, that he'll continue to develop and continue to be that guy, that where they're playing primarily in zone. Like he can play that position and play at a high level. And I've seen he's got a couple game balls this year from the coaching staff, even though you look at the stats, you're like, oh, okay. So you got to find it elsewhere, look at it on tape. So Max Melton, he had an injury scare in week 2. He played all but 1 snap last week. He's good to go. And then you're right. It's like Denzel Burke. It's Catrell Clark, a 3rd-year 6th rounder who, he's seldom played since his rookie season when they had a really bad roster. It's kind of a mix of that, but I think where they expect to be picked up is that front 7. And then of course, what they got on the back end, you guys are very familiar with the Washington native and Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, the former Coug. Those are guys that have been made and stays in this defense. And then the addition of 2nd-year player, Rabbit Taylor Demerson, who had a big pick, should have been a game-changing one for the Cardinals last week, kind of a ball-hawking 3rd safety. So, where they're kind of lacking experience and depth at the corner spot, they've been able to make up, throughout the rest of the defense.
All right, Bo, last 2 questions. The Cardinals win this game
if they can get any kind of offense going, it's just been too consistent offensive playing from this team. Can they get the run game going, and then can they get Marvin Harrison Jr.? I'm not expecting for the first time that they're going to targeting him double-digit times in the passing game, but can they connect on those plays? Like you mentioned, there was that big drop that would have gone for God knows how much, 40 yards, if not more, and then the touchdown in the end zone that they were bailed out because there was a DPI on another Cardinals wide receiver in the end zone. So can they get it going offensively? The big thing to me, though, Brian, is got to be mistake-free. That's where they really lost those games last year, where the final score would have been a little bit closer than it was. There was those back-to-back drives where Kyler Murray threw picks. You just can't have that. With the way that they're trending offensively, you got to continue to take care of the football. So mistake-free, and then just hit on a couple of these explosives that they've been lacking in both the pass and the run game.
And when you look at the Seahawks, where do you see their biggest advantages in this game against Arizona?
Their biggest advantage, can they create some pressure on Sam Darnold? The last time I saw Sam Darnold in person was the playoff game that was moved from LA to Glendale. And Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts again against the Rams defense. Can they do that? I know Sam has looked really good the last 2 weeks. Can they maybe turn back the clock on Sam Darnold? Can they continue, turn up the pressure to where he'll make some mistakes? They played him in Minnesota last year, and they had a really good game plan 3 quarters of play. And then him and Justin Jefferson got hot, and they just couldn't hold on for dear life. If they can, I think they've got better personnel to where if they got another rock solid game plan against Sam Darnold, they should have a good chance of winning that. And then the stat you were telling me about JSN, you can't let him go for a 4 straight game with a 40-yard explosive.
So flip that around for a second, Bo. Where do you see the Seahawks' biggest advantages over the Cardinals?
I mean, they're going to be able to let them probably play into their hands as far as letting them dink and dunk down the field. And then if they can play, the red zone defense and the opportunistic defense that we've seen and really set the tone in the trenches, like they should be in a good spot there. I mean, as far as defensively, I mean, really lean into your strength, play the hits, throw it to JSN. Like, I know it's a coordinator change, but they did such a great job in getting Smith and Jigba in mismatches. Like at one point, I think the touchdown in Glendale was against a linebacker. Like they did such a good job. Like I know the Cardinals try to confuse you, but they counterpunched very well. I think if you play the hits with JSN and maybe Seattle gets their run game going, that would be bad news for the Cardinals. But they've been decent against the run.
They certainly have. Bo Brack for Phoenix Sports, thanks for joining. Where should folks check you out and anything they should check out from you coming up?
Yeah, just like yourself, we're talking about the Cardinals every day. PHNX Sports on YouTube. Search it out or wherever you find podcasts.
Awesome, both, man. Thanks for joining. I will see you tomorrow night.
Sounds good. See you then.
All right. That is Bo Brack from PHNX Sports. Check him out. Good stuff as always. And Bo's kind of like, he's got a little bit of me. We're similar in that you can hear the bias towards optimism for the team you're covering and probably kind of rooting for. I don't know if Bo would agree with that, but he's always had kind of a positive spin on what's going on with the Cardinals, where some other folks are a little bit less positive on a team that's really struggled. And I do believe, like I've watched enough of this team play. I think that they have an absolute reasonable shot to win this game. And anyone that thinks this is just going to be a cakewalk, I think you're setting yourself up for maybe an uncomfortable watch tomorrow night. Now, does that mean it can't be a cakewalk? Of course not. Like the Seahawks have come into Arizona multiple times and made it look easy against the Cardinals. There's going to be a ton of Seahawks fans there. It's going to feel like a home game. The Seahawks defense, from my perspective, doesn't really have a weakness other than that they have had trouble getting the quarterback on the ground. But like, you really have to nitpick. And now you're getting back Devin Witherspoon. You're getting back Julian Love. It doesn't feel like there's reasons to expect the Cardinals to make a jump offensively in this game. Defensively, sorry, to finish that thought, especially with James Conner also being out, I am not a big Trey Benson believer. I've watched his snaps. I think he is a fine player. I don't think he's a second round level running back. I think that he is not an inside the tackle guy. He's not a guy that's going to grind out yards. When I saw them try to run him in the red zone against the 49ers, it wasn't pretty. Like, it was definitely not James Conner, who it's almost automatic when you gave him the ball inside of the 5-yard line. That guy was going to drag defenders into the goal. So, into the end zone, I should say. So I think the offense, like the biggest reasons for optimism, if you're a Cardinals fan, or skepticism if you're a Seahawks fan, is that they have a lot to prove. Kyler Murray's been playing reasonably well. Marvin Harrison Jr. probably won't make the same mistakes he made before. And he didn't just suddenly become a bad player. Like, he might not be the next Larry Fitzgerald, which I think Cardinals fans were hoping he would be, but he's just too talented to be bad. I don't see that as an outcome. And so keep an eye on that. And remember, Michael Wilson last year caught a big touchdown to open the game against the Seahawks. He has struggled so far this year. Like, Trey McBride is a quality, like not quality, he's one of the most elite tight ends in the game. And the Seahawks have had some trouble defending the tight end position, in particular Tyrese Knight. So I can kind of talk myself into where there's ways the Cardinals can score some points, but it's really the defensive side that would have me concerned as a Seahawks fan, because Arizona has only given up more than 16 points once this year through 3 games. They gave up 22 points to the Carolina Panthers, and a lot of those points came at the end of the game. So you got a Seahawks team who hasn't given up more than 17, in 3 games. You've got a Cardinals team that hasn't given up more than 16 in 2 of the games, and the most they've given up is 22. Let's say they give up the most they've given up again, 22. Unlikely that's going to be a blowout. Like, if they give up more than they've ever given up this season, let's say they give up 24, it's still probably not going to be a blowout, So I think this is going to be a tight game. And I think that the Cardinals' ability to defend the run is significantly better than it was a year ago. Calais Campbell's a huge part of that. And then the question will just be, can Sam Darnold do it again? Can JSN do it again? Because they've been the best combination in the NFL so far this year. I mean, other than Stafford and Puka Nacua, but it's pretty darn close. And so those types of combinations usually don't take weeks off. And so far they haven't. The worst game JSN has played so far this year, he had 96 yards in 3 quarters and a touchdown. So not exactly poverty level production in that game. So I think you look at the Cardinals cornerback room. I think Bo is being a little generous to Max Melton. I don't think Max Melton has been very good. I think that Keitrell Clark is a guy that you want to kind of target. And just to give you guys some idea, I'll share my screen here so you guys can see what I'm seeing. Hold on one second. I'll get this set up for you guys. So if you look here, this is DVOA for the Cardinals and the Seahawks. And if you look in particular at the defending wide receiver part of this, you'll see the Cardinals are 7th in defending wide receiver 1s. They're 5th in defending wide receiver 2s, which is pretty good considering all the cornerback injuries they've been dealing with. But then you get to receiver number 3, they're 27th in the NFL. Compare that to the Seahawks, who are 5th against wide receiver 1s, 6th against wide receiver 2s, and 3rd against wide receiver 3s, because the Seahawks seem to just have cornerbacks growing out of every part of their body. Like, they have cornerbacks just falling out of faucets over there at the VMAX. So they haven't had trouble guarding any of the wide receivers they've faced so far. But then you also get into defending tight ends and defending running backs. And the Cardinals are 26th in the NFL in defending tight ends and 23rd in defending running backs as receivers. When it says defending running backs, this is as a receiver. So there's yards to be had there. There's yards probably over the middle. I think even though the Cardinals have excellent safeties, not just 2, 3 excellent safeties, they've struggled a little bit with defending the middle of the field and with defending tight ends. Sam Darnold has been the best quarterback attacking the middle of the field in the NFL so far this season. He's been super successful there. I think the tight end group has not yet popped the way I think they're capable of. With Robbie Oots being out, I think they're going to go to a lot more 12 personnel. I think you're going to see a lot of AJ Barner, Elijah Arroyo, Eric Saubert at various times. And I think you're going to see those guys be more productive than they've been and be a higher percentage of target share than they've been. I'm also curious what that's going to look like in terms of how they are able to run the ball when they've got 2 tight ends on the field that are not Robbie Oots being one of those tight ends. Like, there's been times where they have technically 12 personnel because Robbie Oots is attached to the line, but it's really Robbie being one of those guys. And I think there's a difference in a true NFL tight end, even though Robbie played tight end in college, a true NFL tight end being attached in line and being able to be part of the blocking scheme. So that's going to be an interesting thing here. Another aspect of this game that I kind of find fascinating is the Cardinals are the first team the Seahawks are going to face this year that is not probably going to stack the box. They don't do a lot of putting 8 defenders in the box. I think they rank 23rd or lower part of the league in terms of the rate at which they add an extra defender to try to defend the run. the Seahawks have been facing the second highest rate of stacked boxes. Now, I talked to Sam Darnold about this yesterday, if I'm remembering correctly. The days are blending together. And my question to him was, hey, is this something where even if you're not running the ball well, the fact that you guys are using 12 and 21 personnel is forcing teams to have an extra linebacker or an extra safety down in the box. And that's allowing the passing game to be the most explosive passing game. And, he was generously saying that's a good point. And yes, that's definitely something that's potentially going on. So defenses so far have decided to say, okay, we're going to match your personnel. We're going to have extra guys to defend the run. I think this is going to be the first week that you have a defense that's like, you guys haven't run the ball for shit. Like, why are we going to add an extra guy in there? Go ahead and have your 12 personnel. We're going to stick with our 3 safety looks. We like our 3 safeties. And we believe Budda Baker can tackle as well as any linebacker out there. And dare the Seahawks to then be able to be effective in the run game against Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson, and the other guys, and have an extra guy in coverage that other defenses so far have not had. And I'm really curious. Like, that's, to me, maybe the biggest question in this game schematically is, how do the Seahawks do when there's an extra defender in coverage as opposed to in the box? Let's do a quick thing here. I'm going to look at this just to see, because I haven't looked this up, to be honest. I am curious how the Seahawks have done passing the ball when it doesn't necessarily give me the opportunity to limit it to when there's not an extra guy in the box. So let me just say neutral box, and let me see. They just have EPA per rush. Lame. I can tell you how the Seahawks have done when they've gone against a neutral box. They're still 28th in the NFL in EPA per rush against neutral boxes. When they're defended by a light box, which is less than 7 defenders, their EPA per rush is 19th. So a little bit better, but still not great. So anyway, I think that's going to be a really interesting kind of chess match. The other interesting chess match is the Cardinals play split safety significant amount of time, the majority of the time. Sam Darnold has annihilated split safety defenses this year. They've seen it very little, but he has one of the best split safety success rates so far. He's just been really effective against it and very efficient against it. So I don't think the Cardinals are going to try to be something they're not and start to do a lot of single high, having one safety deep, but don't know. Like, I think they're going to be who they are. I think the Seahawks have some advantages there. I think the Seahawks feel really good probably about their receiver, like passing options in this game. I think this game's over if the Seahawks can run the ball. If the Seahawks are effective running the football, I think this offense is lethal. And I just don't think the Cardinals have the cornerbacks right now to really hold up if the Seahawks are also running the ball and able to run play action effectively and all those things. If the Seahawks can't run the football, it's going to look like the way it looked against the Saints, where they had like 8 yards on 9 carries in the first half, or against the 49ers. This is going to be a slugfest. It's going to be a slugfest. So let me show you some other things in this game that are worth kind of being aware of. So this is when the Seahawks have the ball on offense. Interesting, even in points for and points allowed, Seahawks ranked 5th in points scored in the NFL. The Cardinals ranked 5th in points allowed. Yards per play, 9th for the Seahawks. Top 10 offense in yards per play. Cardinals 12th in yards per play allowed. EPA per play, though, not as kind for the Seahawks. This is because the EPA stuff, I won't go down a big rabbit hole on this, but if you ever wonder, like, why is EPA different than success rate and what's going on there, and maybe you don't care at all, that's all fine. EPA is highly affected by turnovers. Success rate is not. So you get very penalized, and the Seahawks have had enough turnovers to where their EPA has been negatively affected by it. I think if they continue to play the way they're playing, it'll all equalize. And I think they're much closer to, well, I can even just pull it up. I think from a success rate standpoint is a better way to look at the way the offense has been performing from an efficiency standpoint. And in case you don't know success rate, really quickly, success rate is like 4 yards on first down. I think it's 60% of the yards you need on second down, and then all the yards that you would need on third down. So it's basically a stat that judges whether you are staying on schedule on offense. So that's considered a successful play if you get the requisite yards. EPA is a little bit different. It's definitely still yards based, but in any event, that's the difference between the two. So I'm trying to pull it up. It's a little slow right now. I was trying to waste some time. There we go. All right. So success rate. Success rate. The Seahawks are 12th. Yeah, that's what I would have guessed. So the Seahawks are 12th in success rate, even though they are 18th in EPA per play. I think that's a better judge of how the offense has been efficiency-wise. Now, third downs, though, folks. Eek. Seahawks 25th on offense in converting third downs. The Cardinals are third best. It's a huge mismatch, at least going into this game. And again, running the football is going to be a big part of that. Now, the one thing I will say is the Seahawks have a pretty good first down rate on early downs. I'm saying that because I believe that to be true. I haven't necessarily checked it. So let's go ahead and check it. So I'm not spreading misinformation. Should only take a second for me to do this. So we'll look here and we'll say when it is first or second down, how often where do the Seahawks rank in terms of turning those downs into first downs? I think they're probably going to be at least in the middle of the pack. If not, even better. The Seahawks are 5th in the NFL in first down rate on early downs. They have a 24.5% conversion to first down on early down. So they've been a very effective early down offense. The only offense is better right now: Indianapolis, Dallas, Rams, and Buffalo. Like even the Lions are behind the Seahawks. So that's been a strength and part of why, the third down has not killed them yet because they've been so effective getting first downs before third down. But when they've got to third down, they've stunk. Red zone, again, a little bit of an advantage for the Cardinals. Seahawks have been pretty darn good in the red zone, but still something to watch. Running game has been very decidedly an advantage for the Cardinals defense to this point. Passing game, Cardinals they've gotten fewer sacks than the Seahawks, 5 sacks, fewer pressures. They're rated by almost in every measure worse at rushing the passer than the Seahawks. But I'm telling you, Baron Browning and Josh Sweat are dangerous there. Calais Campbell is still a handful for anybody who's going to go against. Now, Anthony Bradford's questionable. Who knows what that's going to look like? Jalen Sundell, if he plays guard, he's athletic. He is not super strong. And you better be strong if you're going against Calais Campbell. So I think Bradford's a better matchup, although he's got a bad back. So who knows? Otherwise, I think it's worth pointing out the Seahawks are second in the NFL in number of explosive passes. They're number 1 in the NFL in explosive play rate. The Cardinals are 16th at defending and the amount of explosive passes they've given up. So that's a reasonable advantage there. So yeah, as I said before, the Cardinals are 20th in the NFL in terms of their stacked box rate, by the way. So we will see what goes on there. This is another number I thought you guys might be interested in. So even though the Cardinals have pretty bad sack numbers, they have generated 27 quick pressures, which is second most in the NFL. Quick pressures are any pressure that happens under 2.5 seconds. They're the most valuable type of pressure to get, other than obviously getting a sack. And Josh Sweat is tied for third most in terms of those quick pressures. So I like the way their edge players are playing. It's kind of similar to the way Derek Hall and Boye Mafe have been playing, even though they don't have the numbers to back it up. Now let's get to when the Seahawks are on defense. Here's where it's just like pretty huge advantages all across for Seattle. I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but Seahawks, let's look at from an EPA per play perspective. They're 10th. Cardinals are 13th on offense, which is not terrible. If you look at third down, actually, let's look at what their success rate is. Arizona's success rate. This is interesting. So the Cardinals are, even though they have such a high EPA per play, they are 24th in the NFL in success rate. So huge difference there. Like, they're not staying on schedule. I think, I'm not exactly sure why there's such that disparity there. Lack of turnovers. I think they're fourth in the NFL in terms of not giving the ball away. But I mean, 24th in success rate is not good and pretty inefficient. They've not been good running the ball, and they just lost their best runner. They've given up a decent amount of sacks. Remember last year, the Seahawks really, the front four just manhandled them. Like, that was a huge part of what went on in that. And the Cardinals offensive line ranks really well in a lot of different metrics. Second in ESPN's pass block win rate, fourth in PFF's pass blocking grade. So their pass protection has been pretty darn good. You got to watch out for Trey McBride for sure. We'll see what happens there. Then special teams, their field goal kicker has missed a couple of kicks already. And then, the Seahawks have the second best punt return unit in the NFL, the second best kick return, small sample size, which the big returns last week, which obviously affect all of that. So where does this all leave us? It really is going to come down to, I think the Cardinals need to score early. They did that last year, and it still lost going away in Phoenix, in Glendale. But I think this game can get really ugly for Arizona if they have a slow start, because the crowd's going to be booing, the Seahawks fans are going to be cheering, and the Seahawks are probably feeling themselves a little bit, right? After that big win. If they don't turn the ball over and they're able to slow down, like keep the Seahawks from being able to run the ball while staying in their 3 safety, non-stacked box looks, I think this is going to be a close game down to the end. I think Sam Darnold's a better quarterback than Kyler Murray. That usually is a big difference-making aspect of this. I think JSN's better than any receiver they have. I think Kenneth Walker's better than any running back that they have. I think the Seahawks defensive line is better than the Cardinals defensive line. I think the Seahawks linebackers are better than their linebackers. I think the only place I would say that maybe there's a question is I think that you'd probably take the Cardinals safety group over the Seahawks safety group, but I'm not exactly concerned about Julian Love and Kobe Bryant and what they've got going on there. So offensive line, you'd probably, from a pass blocking perspective, it's at least Cardinals are been better so far, but the Seahawks have been a better run blocking group, believe it or not. Tight end you give to the Cardinals, right? Like, so there's like these certain things, but if you zoom out, Mike McDonald completely outcoached Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals twice last year. Arizona was flying high. Their offense could not do a thing. Mike McDonald seemed like he had figured out Kyler Murray. And until Kyler Murray punches back, I think that's just going to be a continuing thing. So really, really curious to see how this game goes. Huge game for both teams. I definitely give the Seahawks the edge in this one. They are the better team. I don't think there's any question they are the better team, but the better team doesn't always win. So looking forward to seeing that. I do want to get some super chats here. We've got a couple new members. Leo has become a YouTube member. Dylan Hall's become a YouTube member. Welcome to the crew. It's great to have you. If you haven't already signed up at patreon.com/hawkblogger, now is a great time to do it. You get ad-free audio. You get access to the Discord channel. And you get verified over at hbtix.com, where you can get tickets from Seahawks fans sold to Seahawks fans. And we got a really cool growing community over there. We've been talking Mariners, talking a bunch of stuff. Congrats to the Mariners on an awesome, awesome win last night. That was so much fun. Looking forward to watching them later tonight. And, if you haven't downloaded the Sleeper app, it is a great time to do that. Follow the Mariners, follow the Seahawks, follow whatever your teams are, your players are, your fantasy sports. Keep up with your friends. There's real-time chat. There is also visualizations of stats, all sorts of cool stuff. And now if you use promo code HAWKS, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, everybody. That'll do it for me. Well, let me take a quick look before we leave just to see if we've got injury reports. Because we do. We do. Zay Jones is out. Will Johnson is doubtful for the Cardinals. Paris Johnson, Will Hernandez, Kelvin Beachum, Evan Brown are all questionable. So they are all questionable. So the only one that's out for sure is Zay Jones. Will Johnson is likely out as well. And then the linemen seem like probably they'll play, but we don't know for sure. All right. That'll do it for this episode. Wait, we've got one more new member, Rez Tuyo. Hopefully I got that close to right. Welcome to the crew. Great to have you. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. That'll do it for this episode of Hawk Blog Mornings. Take care, everybody.